Give them 2 minutes to join. Welcome, Nicole and Ashley, Ezra. All right. So I was actually rushing to get here and to prepare, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna make it. Let's cancel and whatever. But I prepared a little bit, but I think it's the important stuff, and Bezrat Hashem, we'll get some good lessons from the parasha. Let's go. So this week's parasha coming up, the Shabbat, Bezrat Hashem, Parashat Vayeishev. And the parsha opens with Yosef Tzaddik shown as the favorite son in a certain way. His father gives him a special coat, and his brothers have jealousy toward him, hate him. Yosef Tzaddik has two dreams. The first dream is that all of them are like a stalk of wheat, and the stalk representing Yosef kind of rises up and the other ones bow down to him, saying that his brothers are going to bow down to him one day. And a second dream, which really emphasizes that it's going to happen or like it's really happening. The second dream is that there are 11 stars, sun and the moon representing now his parents, and and Yosef Atzadik is in the dream itself, and they're bowing down to Yosef. And they say, "Oh, is this even possible that you're saying that you're bowing down to your parents? That means that we're discrediting this thing." That's what Yaakov Avinu says in order to avoid more of a fight between the brothers and Yosef. And but in the heart of hearts, Yosef, Yaakov Avinu, Shamar davar, he's waiting for this to happen. When is it going to be a time, or what's going to happen that they're going to bow down to him? Nevertheless, there's a strife between the brothers and Yosef Atzadik. Yosef is asked by his father Yaakov to go and check on the brothers. And he goes, and they were being shepherds. And the brothers see him coming, and they say, "Oh, this is the dreamer. The dreamer's on the way, and let's see what's going to happen to his dreams." And actually, Rashi points out it's could either be a form of a quip, like, oh yeah, let's see what's going to happen to his dreams. Let's because they want to kill him, or it's the actual Torah talking where it's, they're thinking one thing and yeah, let's see, his dreams are going to actually come true. Anyway, they have intention to kill Yosef Atzadik. Just pausing here for a moment, and this is a very tough thing to understand. Like, how could the brothers, like, these are the Shvatim, these are tzaddikim. How does this come into play? That they want to kill their brother? Like, really? What's going on over here? So there's an explanation that they looked at their history and they saw Avraham Avinu had Yishmael and had Yitzchak, and Yishmael was like the bad son. And Yitzchak has Yaakov and Esav. Esav's the bad son. So they said there must be a bad son as well from our father Yaakov. And if this kid, Yosef, is snitching on us and talking bad about us, and we're all together in this group but him, it must be he's the odd one out. And we might as well just finish him off now than having to go through history with him. That was their intention. And Reuven actually saves the day to a certain extent and says, let's not kill him, put him in the pit, and let Hashem deal with him. And the Torah tells us the pit had no water in it, and the obvious question is because the pasuk says "V'haborek en bomayim," that the pit was empty, it had no water. Well, obviously, if it's empty, it has no water in it. So the Gemara tells us it has no water, but it had nechashim v'akravim. It had snakes and scorpions. Pretty dangerous pit. Yet they didn't affect Yosef Atzadik. They put Yosef Atzadik in the pit, and actually Reuven wanted to come back the next day and take Yosef out of the pit. But there was as Rashi tells us, there was a rotation. Every child had to spend time with the father, Yaakov Avinu, taking care of their father, and that was Reuven's day. And when he came back, Yosef was gone. In the meantime, that's when Yehuda thought of selling Yosef instead of letting him rot in the pit. Why don't we make some money off of it? And they sold him down to Mitzrayim. Yosef HaTzadik is in now, and the intention was they're going to take the coat of Yosef, dip it in blood, and show their father that he got killed by an animal. So the parasha actually pauses here and tells us the story of Yehuda and Tamar. Story of Yehuda and Tamar is that Yehuda that Tamar was Yehuda's daughter-in-law, and she was married to Er, and then Onan. Er died, and there was a sin that he committed, and then Onan did the same sin, and now two of these husbands, two brothers died, and she's alone, and there's a third brother, Shelah, and Yehuda didn't want to give the same lady to the third brother because this lady, kills my sons. Forget it, I'm not giving her to the brother. But she wanted to build from the family of Yehuda, and therefore she makes herself available. Yehuda, not knowing that it was her. There's different explanations, like how could this be of becoming of such a great one of the Shvatim, Yehuda? So the general explanation is that because he gave her his staff and his ring, it's like a marriage, and he went with her, and then she got pregnant, and it came out to his ears that his daughter was pregnant, but she wasn't married, and she also felt in halachot of Yibum, the laws of Yibum originate from the story where, if a brother dies without any kids, the next brother can marry her. The laws of Yibum back then was also, before Matan Torah, was also that another family member. So she's like, I know the laws of Yibum, and I could therefore marry and be there available and seduce or whatever, Yehuda, because this is the way it's supposed to happen. Yibum. Anyway, she's pregnant, and they tell Yehuda about this. And he says, look, she is a woman that, so it wasn't just a single woman that went with a guy, but rather she is a woman that officially is supposed to be designated for the third son. He just didn't want to give the third son to her. So he says she's designated in the laws of Yibum. That's called a zika. This is back in the laws of Yibum. Even today, if a man dies and leaves no children, and the wife therefore has a connection to the husband's brother, that connection is called a zika. That connection needs to be materialized. They need to get married or broken, which is through chalitza. Nowadays, we always opt for chalitza, but that zika needs to be broken or materialized. So she has a zika, according to Yehuda. Yehuda says, look, she's meant for my other son. I don't want to give her to the son, Shelah, but she's meant for him. And therefore, she violated over here. She went with someone, and um, and now she's pregnant. She's got to be killed. Tamar knows that it came from Yehuda, but knows at the same time that Yehuda is a big person, a great person. And she says, what do you mean it was you who did it, this and that? It's going to be embarrassing, etc. It's unbelievable. We learn an unbelievable lesson from Tamar, and that's why Tamar is a very Jewish name. Many ladies named after her, a tzaddiket. And she says that really the one that gave me the staff and the ring, he's the man, father of the children. She brings this to Yehuda and the Bet Din there, and Yehuda could easily have denied it. No one would have known. But Yehuda says, Tzadka mimeni. She is right. It's from me. She was willing to die, to get burnt, because that was the type of death that was due to her, than embarrassing someone. And we learn from there how important it is not to embarrass anyone. Look at Tamar. She was willing to die, not to embarrass Yehuda. Unbelievable. But also we see some righteousness from Yehuda, that at the end of the day, he admitted his sin. How important it is to, when a person is, if you keep on covering it up, then the smell is only going to get worse and worse. It's only going to be worse for you. But if you admit you sinned, you make amends, and you can do teshuvah, and you can move on. Parashah goes back to the story of Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef is bought by one of the ministers of Paro named Potiphar. A point over here that many comment on is that the Torah tells us that when Yosef HaTzadik was bought, he was bought by Arabs that were carrying very good smelling items. And the Torah tells us the items that they were carrying. And the question is, like, who cares what they were carrying? Just tell us the main point, that they bought him and they took him down to Mitzrayim. What does it make a difference? What they were selling, good spices, good colognes. And the Rashi answers already that this is a beautiful lesson for us and also taught Yosef something. Imagine Yosef, 17-year-old, and being sold, sold down to Mitzrayim. This is a traumatic thing. Yet, who buys him? People with good smelling items. And it was rare that these people, okay, Rashi tells us, these type of people, they smell really bad. And the items they sell, they have in general, actually, Rashi tells us is oil, and oil doesn't smell, so good. Gasoline, oil, neft, right? And this is something unusual. But this unusual good smell was to actually tell Yosef HaTzadik that I'm with you. You're going down to Mitzrayim. Here's a little show of love that I'm still here with you in this situation, never to lose focus. Yosef is bought by one of the ministers of Paro named Potiphar, and Potiphar's wife, Eshet Potiphar, tries to seduce Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef was a very good-looking man, the Torah tells us, and she tried to seduce him. And she tried to seduce him many, many times, and she failed. And it came to a point that actually Yosef was going to give in. The Chachamim tell us that he saw a vision of his father's face, and that reminded him of where he came from, and he didn't sin, and he ran away. There was a moment where Torah tells us there was a time of like some sort of holiday, and everyone was busy with this holiday, but she says, no, 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 I'm not feeling well. And she stayed home alone with Yosef. She tried to seduce him. He runs away. And then she frames him. She says, look, he left his clothes behind. This is why he ran away. Look what he tried to do to me. And of course, people believed her. And Yosef is thrown in jail. Um, just a pause here on the story. Actually, something from today's Mishle Shiur gave me an answer to a question that I had for a little bit. And I saw the Rashi today. Rashi tells us that Yosef was a good-looking guy. And when he went down to Egypt, and now he's an Eved, he's a slave in the house of Potiphar, one of the ministers, but he wasn't acting so slavery. He was misalsel b'saro. He was, playing with his hair, making himself look nice. And the Midrash says, Rashi brings down, you're making yourself look nice, and your father, Yaakov, is meanwhile like mourning over you. Ani gare bechat dov. The Midrash says, I'm going to send you the bear, which is referring to the wife of Potiphar to try seducing you, and then you eventually went down to jail. Question is, I've had this question for a while, like, why is she called a bear? Call her a lion, call her something else. Why specifically a bear? And actually, we learned today in Mishle, and the Gaon of Vilna explains the difference between a bear and a lion. And the explanation for a bear is that a bear is always hungry. A bear is always on the attack. A bear is always going to eat and is always looking for food and is always eating and is always on the attack. And so too, she's compared to a bear because the Torah tells us every day she was after him. And therefore gives us a good context to understand why specifically the Midrash uses and refers to her as a bear. Yosef is thrown in jail. And he was in jail for a total of 12 years, but he's in jail for a long time, 10 years. And at first. And then toward the end of the parasha, in jail, Yosef sees two new inmates, Paro's baker and bartender, Sarah Ofim and Sarah Mashkim. And Yosef says something unbelievable, which we're going to talk about. And he says, why is your face down? You guys look sad. Everything all right? And they tell him, look, we had a dream. And each one had a dream, a similar type of dream. And we don't understand it. And he says, okay, what's the dream? What's going on? So the bartender says, in my dream, there were 3 vines of grapes. And then in my dream, these lush grapes, I take my hand and I squeeze the grapes into the cup of Paro, and Paro is holding that cup. And the baker says, I have a dream of 3 baskets of bread on my head, and then a bird is eating from the top basket. So Yosef HaTzadik says, this is the interpretation of your dream. The dreams are similar. The three baskets and the 3 vines are compared to 3 days. In 3 days, You, the baker, are going to be killed. That's the eating out of your head. And you, the bartender, are going to be reinstated. And that's what happened. And the question is, so what did they do and why were they reinstated and why were they in jail in the first place? They were in jail because the Paro found a rock, a stone in the bread. And for the bartender, he found a fly in the drink. So he sent them both to jail. So why was the bartender reinstated and the baker killed? Because the baker should have done a better job and make sure that there's no rock or stone in the bread. Whereas the bartender, it wasn't his fault. The fly just flew in. It could have flown in at the last second. It wasn't his fault. And therefore he was reinstated. On his way out, on the bartender's way out, Yosef Atzadik says, please remember me when you go out of jail and you're going to go back to Paro. Tell him I'm here. Remember me. And that's where the parasha ends. Next week, Parashah, we see Paro has interesting dreams, and the bartender remembers him and remembers how he interprets the dreams. We'll talk about that then. So I threw in some of my points that I want to explain already into the story. I think I made it a little bit more interesting. It's unbelievable. The stories are unbelievable for sure. So many lessons. So number one is there is a lesson. Why is the story of Yehuda and Tamar right in the middle of the story of Yosef Atzadik? Tell us that these stories are connected. The stories are connected over here. That both Yosef and Yehuda, they were in the house of Yaakov Avinu. They grew up as tzaddikim. They both faced an unbelievable test. Yosef Atzadik, a test from this woman trying to seduce him, and Yehuda from a test of saying the truth. And if he didn't admit, she could have been killed, and no one would have ever known of the story. Yet, in such a moment, they did the right thing. And that, of course, is a great lesson for us that we're going to have tests in life. There's going to be tests in many ways, testing our faith, testing so many things. And we have to make sure, of course, to have the knowledge, the experience, and to succeed and to ultimately make the right choice and to put into practice everything that we learned. So, I'll keep the story for the end if there's time for it. A very important point with Yosef Atzadik in this whole story. It all starts from when he tells the bartender and the baker, like, "Hey, you guys, what's up? Your face is down today. What's going on?" He shows concern in someone else. Imagine he was in the same spot as them. If you're in jail, you're this, you should be just thinking about yourself. But he has concern for someone else. When he has concern from someone else, that's where everything turned around for him. That's where he interpreted their dreams, and eventually he came out based on them knowing that he interprets dreams. So the entire salvation came about because Yosef thought about someone else. Unbelievable. And again, if we look at Yosef's life, Yosef starts off as the favorite from Yaakov. He learns very much with his father, but then he's sold by his brothers. They wanted to kill him. He's a slave. He was falsely accused, thrown in jail for 10 years. People would kill themselves. People would be depressed for life. But Yosef tells these people, Madua penechem ra'im hayom. Why is your face bad today? He built himself so much with such emunah, such faith, recognizing everything's min hashamayim. Everything that I went through is min hashamayim. And therefore, there's some mission in this, even though it's so difficult for me. So I'm not sulking in my bitterness. I can move on from that based on the emunah, based on the faith, based on everything that I've learned. He built himself to that point, which is unbelievable. Now, Yosef, though, I said, in total, he was there for 12 years. The other 2 years was because there was a tiny lack of faith, lack of emunah, when he told the Sarah Mashkim, tell Paro, don't forget me. So that's a little bit of a lack of faith. You just tell Hashem. Hashem's there. You don't have to tell and make that extra effort. But the question is, wouldn't anyone do the same thing? That's a normal effort to do. What's so wrong about it? And the answer is that he told the bartender right after he interpreted the dream. I mean, there was still another 3 days till Paro was going to call him. But because Yosef HaTzadik on his level already asked for the salvation, he already asked for, hey, just remind him about me. He said that right before, like there's another 3 days to go. So that was tiny, tiny, tiny little bit lack of emunah on Yosef's part, and that's why there was another 2 years uh, pegged to his bill. But that also shows us how Hashem deals with tzaddikim, Hashem deals with the righteous. Because on their level, on that level, he should have been even more perfect. End of the story that I heard from my rabbi in Near Israel. Um, and I think I mentioned the story fairly recently, maybe. And the story goes of a young man in yeshiva that was a good-looking man, and his father one day came to the yeshiva to visit him, and the father, like looked like an ugly guy, and like a noticeably ugly guy, and like, what, this is your son? Like, totally different look. And someone had the guts to ask, like, your dad and you look like nothing apart. You look nothing alike. You guys look totally apart. So the son said, I'll tell you the story behind it. He says, the story goes of a great rabbi named Rabbi Mordechai Yafeh. Mordechai Yafeh in Hebrew, Yafeh means nice, beautiful. It happened to be his name, but that also was, he was a beautiful looking man. And in the 17th century in Poland, he he wrote, but Mordechai Yafeh, also known as the Levush. He wrote many Sfarim, and the story goes that he was a good-looking man, and a lady tried seducing him. He went to different homes to collect money for the local yeshiva, and he went to a home, and a lady tried seducing him, and he couldn't get out for some reason. He says, you know what? Let me just go to the bathroom. Let me go to the outhouse. Back in the day, the bathrooms were outside of the house, but the wealthy people had a bathroom in their house. But the way it worked was, it seems like there was some sort of system that it would actually, all the waste would go outside. And there was like from the bathroom, like a little like tunnel that would actually, everything would go outside. And in order not to sin, this great rabbi went through that tunnel, he got himself totally filthy in order not to sin. And he said that from that time on, he felt like his mind opened up. He got to a different level in his learning because he held himself from that sin and what he did, and he got to a higher level due to that.
Okay.
And
You did?
yeah,
Okay.
let's mute that. And
And then, you have a nice holidays.
right at the crunch time there, right?
And then, thank
Okay,
you.
Samsung,
Right.
let's mute.
So we'll see you that.
Thank you. Okay, so he felt that at that moment that he controlled himself, he got to a higher level in his ruchniut, in his learning, and at the same time, he named his books Levush. Levush means clothing, because he always remembered the smell of that clothing, the way this clothing was, but it was that clothing that was really dirty on the outside. It was actually really beautiful, reminding him of this of the strength that he had to spare himself from that sin. And then he said, I don't want any of my children to have this test of being good looking like I am. And therefore this lady tested me. And therefore he said, he prayed to Hashem that for the next 10 generations, his children and grandchildren, great grandchildren are all going to be ugly. And therefore, back to the story, this yeshiva boy who had the ugly father, but he was good looking. He told them, he says, my father's the 10th generation. I'm the 11th generation. So good looks came back to that family. But it just shows us that when a person controls themselves, how much bracha is attached to it. Again, thank you guys very much for coming on, and really happy that it all worked out. Because like I mentioned, I was running a little bit late today, didn't have much prepared, but I think it all worked out, Baruch Hashem. Thanks again, and hopefully we'll see you guys on Shabbat. Have a good day, guys. All the
Thank
best.
you, Rabbi Hasakubaru.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.